Welcome to the Invest Like a Boss podcast.
I'm Sam Marks.
I'm Derek Sparts.
And I'm Johnny FD. We're self-made entrepreneurs who invest our own money and use modern technology to invest like a boss.
Join us each week for exclusive interviews with our network of modern investors, business owners, and multimillionaires to discover new ways to invest our hard-earned cash.
Buenos amigos, y chicas, chicos, Invest Like a Boss listeners. We are in Buenos Aires, Argentina.
I actually just landed. I barely know where I am right now. It's been a long day. I think like 15 hours in total to get here, and I slept maybe an hour of it. And I just met up Johnny. We got a little bite to eat. I got some more coffee because I'm trying to stay awake to adjust my body. And then
it's now pouring rain and thundering, if you guys can hear it.
And this is the first time I've seen rain in probably 6 months because I live in Los Angeles and it doesn't rain there like March to September.
And you know, the funny thing is, for the last year, like 12 months straight, I've had nothing but summer. I've been in Thailand, and then I went to Ukraine in May. So I just had sunny weather for the last 12 months. Today was the first time I've seen it rain in a year.
It's actually kind of nice. It reminds me of those. You ever go on like YouTube and they have like those videos if you like maybe want to fall asleep or something?
Yeah,
it's kind of what we're looking at right now.
Exactly. Until then, you have the thunder or the lightning storms.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of which, if anyone's ever followed the Argentinian economy, that's kind of how they operate, or how they've traditionally been these last probably hundreds of years. What do you actually know about the economy here, as well as the dollar value?
Well, we should get into why I'm here first. So It's just by chance that Johnny and I are in the same city at the same time. We really didn't plan this. I've been on a quest to run marathons on each continent of the world. And last year I actually wanted to do Buenos Aires, and I ended up picking Sydney, Australia instead because they were on the same date. And I was like, okay, this year I'll do Buenos Aires. And then Johnny tells me he's in Buenos Aires. I was like, this is perfect.
To run the marathon as well.
Right? Yeah. I just saw him run a whole block. And I think he thought that was a half marathon.
Yeah.
But I picked it here also because I was like, I heard it's really cheap and it's a cool like European vibe city. And so far just getting here, there is some European vibes. And my hotel that I haven't even seen yet, I'm hoping is nice. It looks really nice. And I think I paid like $500 for 7 nights.
Yeah.
And that's like the cost of one night in Los Angeles. So that alone was appealing to me.
Well, we can talk about my Airbnb. What do you think of this one?
This is a nice place too. I would say this is like a nice modern apartment, and that you would like in America. If you have this in America, this is a $2,000+ a month apartment.
Yeah, the doorman.
Nice I didn't even think about that. Yeah, you got a concierge. Yeah,
there's a pool, which isn't working now, but and actually a really good gym, good location. It's $30 a night because it's the off season.
That's insane. So you could probably rent this place for under $1,000 a month.
Yeah, I'll actually right around there. My friends that all have nice places all kind of rent between like $700 to $1,000, depending on how nice and how big the place is. So it is cheaper, but as you've already seen from just the breakfast and lunch prices, it's not that cheap here.
Yeah, the food prices, at least at restaurants, were definitely cheaper than the US, but it wasn't so cheap that I was like, wow, that's an amazing value.
Yeah.
But then we went to one spot and just like a can of Pepsi was $3.50 US, which is wild to me.
So you're right, technically 3,500 pesos. So if you did it by the official rate, it's actually more than 350. Because officially you get 900 to the dollar.
Okay, yeah, I saw 1,000 this morning, but I'm sure it varies. And Johnny has a nice little hack on how if you're coming to Argentina, you can actually get even more than that for your money if you're bringing US dollars.
But first off, you have to take a little sip of this.
And I don't know what this is, like a weird chunky drink. I know we're on audio, but
okay, you want to describe the vassal, the cup that I gave you?
Yeah, it's almost like one of those coconut ones you would get at like a tiki bar, but it's not.
Like
it's
a wooden
But it's shaped kind of like one of those.
And the straw?
The straw is like circular at the bottom, but at the top it looks like you chewed on it.
Yeah, it's a metal that's kind of like bent in top. This is mate.
Okay.
You probably know it as yerba mate.
Yes.
It's probably a bit hot, so be careful.
So I sip it?
Yeah. And this is the national drink. Everybody drinks this.
It's funny. I thought you said earlier you were making us lattes. So this is actually Like, I see this in the can all the time at, like, the fancy food stores in Los Angeles.
And what's funny is if you ever say to an Argentinian person,
It's good. I should say that too. Yeah.
Well, you have to finish it.
What? Okay.
I mean, it's not that much liquid. It's like
Okay.
2 ounces of liquid per serving, and you traditionally pass it back and forth. Like you make someone a mate, which is you kind of like basically fill the cup, then you pass it to your neighbor. And I was actually very tempted to ask the random dude on the street who was drinking a mate if he can have some, which I don't think is normal to stop a stranger on the street.
It sounds like something you would do, though.
Yeah, but actually, I almost feel like he would do it.
Yeah.
Because, like, Argentinians are very nice, number one. And then second, they're very used to just sharing. So if we were at a concert, if we were at a meeting, if we were, like, sitting, somewhere, like, let's say we were all listening to, like, some person talking,
Mm-hmm.
And even if we didn't know each other, it would actually be pretty normal and common to share mate with each other.
Okay. Yeah, I see that. It's like a traditional type thing to, like, break bread with someone, but it's breaking mate.
Yeah.
So first impressions, I guess. So we're gonna break this episode into two parts. First impressions, because I just got here. Johnny's been here a while, and then we're gonna come back probably tomorrow or maybe the next day when I've gotten to check it out more and get some and check out more neighborhoods. I've literally been here 2 hours.
Yeah.
So, but first, it's pretty clean. All things considered. Do you know what the population is? It seems like a big city.
It's at least 3 million, but I think that it's maybe 3 million people live here.
In this proper city.
But at any given time, there's 10 million people here.
Okay, yeah, and there's like huge events going on. So we got the marathon. I think there's like 40,000 people running on Sunday. And then I saw there's a Lollapalooza here this weekend with like huge artists that people in the U.S. would recognize. There's like Shawn Mendes, Justin Timberlake, things like that. So
and what's his name? Phil Collins, was it?
Was Phil Collins on that list?
No.
Eric Clapton. Eric Clapton was playing a show here too. So,
on a separate concert, not
yeah, he's not playing Lollapalooza. But there seems to be a lot of like cultural relevance to come here, which is why I was surprised I couldn't get a direct flight from Los Angeles. I had to fly through Santiago in Chile. But Johnny was able to get a direct flight from Europe.
From Madrid. But I think just because there's so many people who live in Madrid or in, nearby, in Spain, Portugal, and travel here. If you guys haven't been to Buenos Aires, it's known as the Paris of South America. And I don't know if you saw it at all when you're driving in the taxi, but I'm sure the next few days you'll see there's huge, squares.
Yep.
Very European looking.
Yeah, the first thing I thought was when we saw that the big square, which I think is where the marathon's going to start, there's a huge statue with a guy on a horse, and I'm like, that's like straight out of every European city.
Yeah, and a lot of the buildings, architecture, it does have that vibe, but also it does feel a little bit like Mexico, or there's even one part that looks like what I would imagine Cuba to look like.
Yeah, the infrastructure seems like it's a little lacking. The sidewalks are a little bit rough. The driving styles are kind of made up. My Uber driver actually drove on the wrong side of the road for a while to cut through some traffic. I wasn't mad about it, but when I saw a lot of oncoming cars, I got a little freaked out considering I just landed. But I mean, I think that's nothing that you wouldn't expect coming here.
But Uber was cheap.
Yes.
And it works.
I had a 25-minute ride. It was $8 US.
Which is the most expensive Uber ride like here so far, because normally all my rides are like 20-25 minutes.
Yeah.
But they're $3, $4.
Yeah, he was also like side hustling, the guy I had, and he had some other app that kept popping up that I could see, and it, like every ride he denied was like $2, $3, $3, $2, and it's like gas isn't much cheaper here. We worked it out. It's about the same as California, $4 to $4.50 a gallon US, and if you're making $2 to $3 an Uber ride, I don't know how these guys are making anything.
Yeah, it's wild, but at the same time, I was speaking to a girl last night I met at a bar, and she was in her black kind of business suit. Can you guys hear the rain kind of just finally stopped? But
they probably can, because they're like, now we can actually hear your voices.
So she was wearing, not like an expensive business suit, but something that you would see someone working at Sephora or MAC Cosmetics.
Yeah,
wear.
like the lady behind the counter type thing.
Yeah, and it was
demos.
It was a language exchange club. She was like kind of her mid to late 20s, and she told me she works in sales at a mall, and that her total income per month for the salary and the commission combined, working 11 hours a day shifts, 5 days a week, was $300 US.
Like brings home $300 total a month. Like even now with the way things are, if you're bringing home $300 a day, you're not doing so great. You're middle class at best. And that's $300 a month.
Well, what was wild is the beer she ordered, just a standard beer, but we were like at a kind of a cool bar. It was 5,000 or 6,000 pesos, which is let's say about $5.
Okay.
For her to make that, we calculated, she would have to work for at least 2 hours, more than 2 hours, just for that one beer.
I just went to Wisconsin 2 weeks ago. Guess how much a beer at the bar was there?
It can't be more than $8. Nobody's gonna pay that.
$3.50.
Well, that's so cheap.
Yeah.
Okay. I think the most expensive possible beer.
Yeah, this is like middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. Okay. Like small town dive bars. But there is still value in spots in the United States, which I was surprised to see that there's actually places in the United States where a drink is cheaper than even down here in Buenos Aires. So when you're making $300 a month and you're paying $5 a beer, you're out of money quick.
Yeah. So as soon as she calculated, I kind of forced her to calculate how many hours she needed to work for that beer.
Yeah.
You just saw her like knuckles clench around the glass. That's just
like a gold.
Yeah. Gold. And like she just started sipping it for the rest of the night. She was like, I'm not buying another one of those.
That's hilarious. But also sad.
Yeah.
I think you had mentioned too that they have more of like maybe nationalized healthcare or some kind of benefits that we probably don't get in the U.S. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a very socialist type friendly country where they want a lot of benefits. The people demand a lot of things from the government, whether it's free education or healthcare, subsidies for things. And I understand it's nice to have these things, but it's also one of the reasons why a lot of socialist type countries fail.
Yeah.
People say, look at Sweden, they do well, but it's a much smaller country with a much higher GDP.
That's the problem when people introduce that stuff to like Americans. It's like, we can't do anything right. And we're giant country, huge landmass, 300 plus million people. It's like, it's not going to work.
Yeah, it is what it is, but that's a good way to kind of preempt the next topic that you have experience with already. It's the money exchange. You gave me $100, so you Venmoed me $100. Well, I told you, hey, bring crisp blue $100 bills. And what did you bring?
I brought one $100. So I had an insane week, and I took out cash, and ATMs don't usually spit out hundreds. They gave me 20s, so I was like,
old 20s.
Yeah, I was like, I'll exchange these for 100 at a store or something, and I totally spaced it. So I was like, what's the difference? U.S. money is U.S. money, but that's not the case according to Johnny, and I'm going to tease it because we're going to take a super quick break to hear from our sponsors, and then Johnny's going to tell you how to get more bang for your buckaroos in Buenos Aires.
Hey bosses, we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. The show will be right back.
All right, back, Johnny. I messed up. I did bring one $100 bill, but even though it's cheap here, I don't think that's going to get me very far. But what did I do wrong, and what should you do if you are coming from the United States to Buenos Aires?
So I think for $100, you would be able to eat maybe 3 good meals. Mm-hmm. Like, in talking about steak and wine.
Yeah.
And not the most expensive places, but just like a decent place.
A solid B-level
So
restaurant.
That could last you maybe 2 days, right? If you're having breakfast and lunch.
And I'm here for 8,
Yeah.
so...
So we definitely need to figure this out. So for advice for anyone before you come, I don't want to say the crappier the country, but like the more cash dependent the country, the more they want crisp blue $100 bills, like the brand new ones, and they literally call it the blue dollar exchange rate. So if you come in with a 20, if you come in with a 10 or a 50, a lot of places just won't take it, or if they do, they'll give you a much worse rate.
I also learned that I think when I went to Australia last year, I had 100, but it was weirdly old, like really old.
Mm-hmm. The big faces.
No, like I think faces. Even like, yeah, maybe like the first version of the big faces. And the place was like, I'm not taking that. I'm like, it's a real, like, it was. So there's something about the new crispy ones and the blue ones. Yeah, that got the strip in.
I understand because they get counterfeit. People counterfeit money.
Yeah.
And within the U.S., if someone tries to counterfeit, you can put them in jail. But
what are you gonna do here?
What are you gonna do here? So that's why they're so strict on it. I had a $100 bill that I was carrying around throughout Thailand and throughout Ukraine, and nobody wanted to change it.
That's funny.
And finally, my buddy from the US was here. And I was like, "Hey, can I please give this to you?" And he's like, "Yeah,
please."
Yeah." And he was like, "Yeah, no worries." And then he had no problem,
Yeah, I wouldn't even question that in the States, but that doesn't make sense in other countries. So I got crispy $100 bills. Am I taking it to the airport? Am I going to an ATM?
Okay. So you want to find a money exchanger, and if you look online, if you look at these movies, these documentaries, it makes it seem like you go to some like shady back alley place where you have to like know a guy.
Right.
It turns out you can just go on Google Maps, type in currency exchange, look at ratings and reviews, and just walk there or take an Uber there.
In every city I've been to now, if you're staying in a semi-populated area, they're all over the place. I think you just don't notice them, and then when you're actively looking for them, though, you're like, wow, there's a lot of exchange places around. Some are better than others.
There's a decent amount, but I've always had to like travel there, like walk 25 minutes or take a Uber there.
The last time I used one, I thought I got a pretty good rate, and then I asked like 2 or 3 places, and then the place I picked had the best rate. And then, so I got some cash there, and then just for fun, I saw one more later, and they gave an even better rate, and I was mad that I changed it where I did.
So the one here, there's and everything changes all the time. The rates change, so do your homework when you get here. But basically, the story is, I went to a Western Union, and they offered me, and I guess to give everyone context, right now, currently, the official rate, actually you don't have internet on your laptop right now.
I don't. I have my phone now.
But I think it's right around 900. So I just typed in $1 to the peso, and it said 55 Filipino pesos. So I had to specify. Okay,
There's quite a few pesos out there.
The better way to do it is $1 equals 962 Argentine pesos.
Oh, so interesting. If you go from Argentinian pesos to US dollar, it's 1,000, but the other way around, it's less.
There's a spread. So you get basically $1, you get 962. If you use your credit card, you get something called a tourist-friendly rate, which is, let's say, about 1,000 or something, maybe a little bit more.
And I think that's determined by each credit card company, right?
Yeah. Although Visa has a rate, MasterCard has a rate. I think Visa actually advertises it on their website every day, and it changes. And then MasterCard's like, we'll just give you whatever rate we think is best. So it's tricky. So then the best way to do it is then the next level. If you go to like a Western Union, whether you Western Union the money to yourself or you bring in cash, you'll get a better rate than that even. But the very, very, very best rate is coming in with those $100 blue bills. I got you a stack, and it was for $100 we got 122,000 pesos.
Okay, so you get about like a 20% bonus.
Yeah, and actually I calculated, I think compared to 90 from 962 to 1220, if you want to do the math.
Sure. That's a 26% difference. So you're getting a 26% discount on everything you buy. And we should also mention they do VAT tax here, I assume, which is you already pay for the tax, unlike the US where they add another percentage afterwards. The price you see on the shelf is the price you pay.
Which is really nice. It's convenient.
Yeah.
I
wish we had that in the US.
Yeah, except for the benefit of it is in the US, people end up spending more because they think they can trick themselves. Like, it's only $999.99.
It's like the gas station where gas is $3.99 and 9 or like that extra little 9.
It's so stupid. But I spilled mate on myself. But having a 25% bonus makes our lives so much easier. And the reason why they do it is they need more US dollars, so they're encouraging tourists to come in, bringing in money, bringing US dollars. If you pay on credit card, you're going to feel like everything's really expensive. If you pay in cash, you're like, you know what? I'm getting a decent deal.
Yeah, so I think that's where we'll cut this thing off because I want to take a day or two in the city to learn more about it. Johnny's found out a lot more. We're going to have some actual Argentinian steak and wine and things like that and get some actual culture of the city. So we're going to take a break here and we'll come right back, but it'll be like 2 days later.
Yeah. Ciao.
If it's time to upgrade your business and get the best checkout on the planet, you should get Shopify. But just don't take my word for it. I've told you guys before how I use Shopify, but did you know that my buddy Johnny FD also used Shopify? Johnny, how did you utilize Shopify's resources?
So instead of me hiring a developer to fix my website every time there was an update and something would break, I just started using Shopify instead and we got on their team. Nothing ever broke. Everything was updated seamlessly everything in the back, and I got to just focus on running my business as intended.
So if you want a flawless checkout and upgrade your business like Johnny did, you can sign up right now for a $1 per month trial period when you head to shopify.com/iLab. That's shopify.com/ILAB. Make sure that the iLab is all lowercase. You can upgrade your selling today when you head to shopify.com/iLab.
Hola, amigo. ¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien. That's all the Spanish I got.
That's all you managed to pick up in 2 weeks.
This is part 2. We're like 2 weeks later. I'm back in the US. Johnny's back in Ukraine. And we're going to give our thoughts on Argentina now that we both had a chance to kind of hang out there. Well, Buenos Aires specifically, because I really didn't leave the city. But overall impressions, why don't you start off, John?
Well, when we met up, I had been there already almost 2 weeks. So I was kind of almost at the last kind of my trip, but it was your like first day. So you were completely fresh.
I was like an hour in when we recorded that first half. So yeah.
So I'm actually very curious with you how much it's changed. Did you actually even go out much after the marathon? Were you able to walk around?
Yeah, I actually forced myself to, and I felt weirdly good at the day of the marathon. I was like, I should not feel this good. Something's up. But I felt really good the rest of the day. But I actually just kind of chilled and like caught up on TV and stuff, and made the mistake of one thing I want to bring up of ordering a pizza in Buenos Aires.
They're not good, right?
They're terrible. They're so bad. They're actually like weirdly known for pizza, and I was like, that doesn't seem right. But there is like a lot of Italian influence there. Weirdly, when they say goodbye, they don't say like adios, they say ciao, which sounds really odd being down there.
From Spain. Yeah, it's from Spain.
So I order a pizza, right? And I'm like, it can't be great, but it can't be awful. You know, I'm just recovering at my Airbnb. So I found a pizza place like right across the street that actually had some decent reviews. And I look at the pizza and I'm like, damn, there's a lot of dough on that thing. But I'm like, okay, I'll give it a chance. And I absolutely despise, like, the worst food I will not eat is olives. I can't do olives. I eat like everything with olive oil, but not with olives. So they're called aceitunas there, right? So I like made it a point. I was like, no aceituna, no aceituna. I ordered one with like ham and it was just like basically ham and like cheese. It comes out. I made the mistake of not looking at it. So I pay for it. I go back to my Airbnb. I open up the box.
Aceitunas.
Full of aceitunas. No meat on this pizza. And literally a garden full of tomatoes on the top. It was like a watery piece of like thick focaccia bread, basically, with some cheese on it.
So I've had 2 different types of pizza in Argentina. One is that really thick focaccia bread. I don't even want to say it's like pizza toppings, but just stuff on top. And then
it was like wet. I'm like, who eats this?
Well, actually, the most famous one is with like caramelized onions on it. I forgot the name of it, but it's like some kind of
that'd be good. I'd be down for that.
It's pretty tasty, but it's not pizza. It's not what you think of as like Italian style pizza, or definitely not New York pizza.
So I was just like, you know what? This is like unedible. I can't. I brought it back and I was like, no aceituna. I actually kind of like said like I'd get sick if I ate them. So she like pulled them off and then she's like, here you go. And I'm like, no, I can't even do it. I was like, I'll literally buy another pizza. And she was like, no. So she actually did make me another one, and it was just like literally they just laid ham on top and put cheese above it, and then and when they cook it too, they don't cook it all the way. It's like just enough to barely melt the cheese. And I was like, I have an oven in my Airbnb. I go, good enough, thank you. I took it and I actually like finished cooking it off in my Airbnb. And I was like, they can't all be this bad. So I think the last night, I was like, I'm going to give pizza one more chance, but at a different place. And this place was popping. Like, it was busy. So I was like, okay, that's always a good sign. And I made it very clear, no aceituna, because everything has olives on it. And he was cool about it. He did it. And it still wasn't cooked all the way, but it was like made way better. So I actually went back, cooked it again a little bit in my Airbnb, and it was like not an amazing pizza, but like an okay pizza. So, but overall, I do not suggest pizza in Argentina.
Yeah, I also had a thinner kind of flatbread version, also just okay. But what is really, really good is empanadas and their steaks. Those 2 things are amazing.
And cheap. I think they're a little bit maybe frustrated about their food situation because I would look up like restaurants, places to go. And a lot of times, although like people snap a picture of the menu so you can kind of get an idea of what's there. Well, menus from like 2022, even 2023, you look at the prices on the menu and it's like a quarter of what it was today. So their like restaurant prices have like tripled or even quadrupled in a sense in like 2 years. So when we complain about inflation being 10% a year, theirs is like 100%.
Actually, it was 300% over the last, I don't know if it's just 2024 in general or the last 12 months, but
It's
yeah,
wild.
I no buenos.
Yeah, there was some stuff. It was like a cup of soup, and we did the conversion. It was like 80 cents on the menu in like 2022, and then now it's like $5. Still cheap compared to LA standards, at least. And pretty much anywhere in the US, you're not going to get the amount of food. The portions are huge, which is awesome, and just the quality of food. I've said it a million times. American food is garbage. Even if you go to like our organic places and get organic produce, it's still not fully organic. The American food system is awful, and that's why everyone is obese here. And you go to Buenos Aires, they are walking around a lot more than Americans. That helps a lot. But the portions they're eating are enormous. They're eating tons of carbs, tons of everything, like, and they're all rail thin. I didn't see
Yeah.
one obese person there. I saw a couple of overweight people, but no one I would say was like morbidly obese when I could see 100 every day here.
Yeah, and actually speaking of, good food and prices, I would say the price there now, at least of October 2024, it's very similar to lots of places in Europe. So to go
Mhm.
out, have a nice dinner, or to have any dinner, $15 to $30, is just the standard price. You're gonna pay that wherever you go. I think the places we ate, every time was 20, $30, but we were eating pretty good. And we can't have that in the US, but you can have that anywhere really in Europe, besides, London or Paris or something, but pretty much every other city you can have really good quality, that organic tasting or organic food with good portions for that price. So Buenos Aires, I would say it is the Madrid or the some people would say the Paris of South America, and it definitely feels that way. The architecture and also the food.
Yeah, it's if you just dropped me there and you didn't say where I was, I would think I was somewhere in Europe because it did definitely have a ton of European influence, a lot of cool buildings and architecture. Their buildings are kind of interesting, I guess, on that note. Did you notice a lot of the towers, Johnny? The fronts will have all windows. It's basically like a ton of windows and all glass, and the sides have like no windows. It's literally just like concrete walls. I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know.
Kind of makes sense. But I think also because people will just build stuff next to them. So they're gonna
Yeah,
have,
that's true. You wouldn't have a view anyways.
yeah. So I think the first time we had filmed, we actually didn't have a steak yet.
No, it was pre-steak.
And our first one was a very, very nice one. Do you remember what it was?
So that was a chorizo bife or something like that. They're called.
Yeah, bife de chorizo, and we also
Yes.
had a ribeye as well. And this was at La Cabrera, and we had their happy hour, which isn't at 4:30 p.m. It's at 7.
So
So
they're early bird special, except it's normal US dinner time. So that was the steal, honestly, probably of the trip for value wise. Johnny, how did that exactly work and how did you come across that?
So I remember I was kind of jet lagged going out there, and I had told like a friend of a friend who's in town and said, "Hey, can we meet for an early dinner, like 6:30?" And he was like, yeah, sure." He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna invite some other my local friends too." And the local friend said, people here don't eat until like 8 or 9. Like nothing's even open. But then he remembered, this one place has this early diner special. You have to get there at 6:30, and it's 40% off the entire menu. So everything on the menu, the steaks, the wine, the desserts, the appetizers, everything off the entire bill. And we decided to order way too much food. My fault.
I was like, there's got to be a catch to this, though. You know how they have those deals in the US and you're like, oh, well, it only applies to a couple of things on the menu or something. No, this is literally everything on the menu is 40% off. And like we said, the prices are already very reasonable. This is a very nice place, but even the prices like normally wouldn't have been outrageous. It would have been probably $100 to $150 meal for us, which, is expensive, but, it was a really nice place. And I think our total bill was, wait, let's go over what we ordered first, Johnny.
That bottle of wine was nice Malbec from
Mhm.
Argentina. We had that big bife de chorizo steak, which was probably, what do you think, like a 24 ounce steak or
It was
something?
over a pound for sure. It was a big,
Yeah.
big piece of meat.
It was a fat piece of meat. And we also had some short ribs or something. And I
Yep.
remember actually someone just mentioning on another podcast being pissed that short ribs are like $45 now where they live.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. It was those weren't my favorite thing, but they were still good. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had a couple sides, and
And
and and
they
then they
brought
brought us
us
stuff
like
too.
extra sides for free. That's something I want to touch on in a minute too. There were so many places I got free things. It was
Yeah,
weird.
and a huge bread basket with like probably seven different things on there.
That Johnny spilled the second we sat down.
Yeah, my fault. Um,
They gave us another one though.
yeah, all that, and it was literally so much food that I tapped out. I said, "Listen, like let's just leave it because I can't finish this."
I was a little disappointed in Johnny. I was like, you don't leave steak on the table. You just don't do that. I don't care. So I finished that part off. We left some veggies though. We definitely left veggies.
So yeah, two really good big steaks, bottle of wine, some sides, apps, tax tip out the door. What was the damage?
The total, I believe, in US dollars was about $80. And for like a table full of food. We have some pictures. I think we'll post it in the show notes too.
And I think it was actually legitimately enough food for 3 or 4 people.
Oh yeah, easily. 3 or 4 people would have been satisfied. And then they even came by with like lollipops at the end and everything. It was nuts. So the only like I guess catch was, which I wouldn't even call it a catch, was you had to be out of there by 8 p.m. But you literally roll in at 6 p.m. on the dot. So you have 2 full hours, which is plenty of time to enjoy it. It's not like you're being rushed out the door.
Yeah, if I lived there, I would just eat there twice a week, and that would be
Yeah.
my
I would
steak
too.
spot.
Yeah, it was awesome. So I had another steak. I think a couple days later, I was like, why not steak again? And then just a lot of like legit good food, and I don't think I spent more than $20 a meal on my own after that, and had like basically like 5-star dining at a lot of places. Some of the like street food that we had. Milanesas, I wouldn't call it street food, I guess, but just more kind of normal food. Those were really good. Kind of like a chicken fried steak, I guess,
Yeah.
with an egg on top and cheese. It's a little bit hard to explain.
But like a
'Cause
really
I'm-
good quality one. Like
yeah,
a
yeah,
very,
yeah. I'm not a big fan of chicken fried steak, but this was like better meat. So
yeah. This is like steak meat.
and I had chori pan. Did you have any of that, Johnny? Over there?
That's
Oh
like
my
chorizo and bread. Yeah.
Lord, I had this place called Chori in Palermo neighborhood. It was like a $12 sandwich. I was like, this better be worth it. I saw it on a TV show, and let me tell you, it was very much worth it. It was huge too.
So to any of the Argentine people listening to this, they're probably upset right now because we're basically saying how cheap their food is, how cheap their country is. What meanwhile, compared to the local salary, they have been screwed. They've been royally effed. Salaries haven't gone up that much in the last couple of years. Crazy inflation. For them, they can barely afford to go out. But actually, someone had mentioned that people do still go out. And I think,
A lot of the places were busy. Yeah.
yeah. And I think it's just the Argentina mentality where they're like, you know what? We are going to live our life. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We're not going to save this money because it might be worth nothing tomorrow. And now we can no longer afford to go out 3, 4 times a week. We can go out once a week, but we're going to make the most of it.
But that's how I live in America, so I don't really feel that bad. I'm forced to go out like once a week because it's so expensive to go out here. Let's talk value in other terms. The food is a good value. I'm not going to say it's great. I would say it's 20 to 30% cheaper than what I pay here because drinks are pretty expensive. If you're going to go out and get alcohol, those are pretty expensive. You're going to pay $8 to $12 a drink, which isn't, a steal by any means.
Yeah, but we're also going to like nice, fancy places, where I think if you went to the equivalent in LA, it would also be like 15 to $20 or something, right?
Yeah, and lots of good happy hours. Same thing as like the happy hour food we got. Happy hour bars, a lot of them have 2-for-1 deals, and the happy hour is 6 to 8, which I think happy hour should be in the US. Like after work, you go have drinks, but usually happy hours here end at like 5 or 6 p.m. and you don't get a chance to go. So the other thing, as far as like buying these things, this was maybe my biggest problem with them. It's not their fault because everything changed so fast with inflation. You have to walk around looking like a drug dealer there if you're going to pay in cash.
Were you paying in cash after I left, or did you start using a credit card?
The only thing I used my credit card for was Uber because I was kind of forced to. And turns out I got a pretty good exchange rate. I got 1 113 to 1, whereas with our $100 bills, we got 120 to 1. So that wasn't bad.
Okay.
But otherwise, cash. Yeah, I had giant wads of cash in my pocket. I think the last day I was running out of cash and I had to use my credit card for like $10 or something. But otherwise, yeah, I use cash the rest of the time. And you literally walk around. I'm not even joking. Like a fat knot of cash, like a 2-inch knot of cash is maybe $100.
Yeah, it's funny. I got a couple comments from Argentinian viewers on my YouTube channel on the video where we were walking around, with the cash, and they were saying, "Why do you do this? You can use your credit cards the same rate, and then also, they have 10,000 peso bills now." Trust me, guys. If that was the case, if it was easy, we would have just done that. Like we didn't act. It was fun the first day carrying around the cash, but after
It gets
this,
old.
Yeah, it gets very old. So
And they don't give up those $10,000 bills easy. Like I had to like beg for one at the exchange place I went to.
yeah, I think it's pretty new. Maybe by the time people listen to this, 2025, that's just gonna be the standard. But when we went, it was like they were hard to come by. Everybody was trying to get rid of the thousands, which is literally worth $1 right now. So that $80 meal we had, imagine putting out 81s on the table.
It looked like a stripper just ate at a steakhouse.
Yeah.
They still have like these tiny bills. You would go and get change and you get $100 bill or a $200 bill or a $500 bill, which is like 10 cents, 20 cents, 50 cents. And I'm like, it has to cost more to print these bills than they're even worth. So they need to sort out their money situation quick, I think, with this inflation.
Yeah, and one good thing is the majority of locals actually just use a credit card because for them, there's no point of walking around with the cash. They are trying to make the US dollar blue rate, the tourist exchange rate, this similar to the credit card rate for a tourist. And from the calculation that I've done today, based on the information online, it's not a 7% difference anymore. It's a 1 or 2% difference. But the problem with that is it changes all the time. You have to keep stay on top of it. If the Argentinian government wants tourists to just start using credit cards and then not walk around with cash, not deal with that, because I think there's a lot of downsides. I mean, first, it can increase crime. Second, it makes tourists spend less money if they have to walk around with cash versus they just put everything on a card.
Mhm.
So I think they need to make that rate very, very similar, like within 1 or 2%.
Yeah, I noticed I don't really use cash in the US, and I was a lot more conscious about what I was spending, having a chunk of cash. And you see that physical pile of cash go down throughout the day, and you're like, do I really need that extra coffee or not?
I don't know if this is actually a Dave Ramsey thing, but that would be a great way to budget. Just pay for everything in cash.
Yeah, it used to be a thing like you get a jar of cash for the week, and this is like you freeze your credit cards or you cut them up or something like that. It would definitely, I think, change my mindset here in the US about what I'm just frivolous little things throughout the day.
I know it works because here in Ukraine, but also when I'm in Thailand, I have to physically go to the ATM, withdraw cash to use. And then even if I want to use my credit card, I have to go put cash onto my credit card here. It's like a debit card.
Oh, okay. It's like preloaded debit card. Okay.
Yeah, and sometimes it's convenient, but I mean, I physically have to withdraw cash from a machine, go to the bank, put it in the machine, and then I'm a lot more conscious of what I'm spending.
If I had to take those extra steps, I would be too. Like I don't want to go back to the machine and stuff it with cash.
Yeah, but meanwhile, when I can use my credit card, especially online, I'm like, okay, whatever, just spend, spend, spend.
So let's talk about things that are not cheaper because there's a lot of that too. I noticed first off, like just general retail items like clothing, no cheaper than the US, might even be more expensive.
Way more expensive, yeah.
It's definitely shoes. So I was running the marathon there. My shoes didn't show up on time. I was like, oh, maybe I can get a pair of shoes, walk around them with a day or two beforehand and find some. And first of all, I wear like ridiculously large sizes that stores never have anyways. But I just looked. I went to an Adidas store and a Nike store, at least twice the price. $400 for a decent pair of like running shoes that would be maybe 200 in the US. I was like, absolutely not. I can't justify that. I'll wear my old shoes.
So speaking of crazy market prices, we went to an Apple store because I wanted to upgrade to an iPhone 16, and it was like $4,000.
Yeah, we did the calculation and we're like, I'm going to load up a suitcase with iPhones and smuggle them down to Argentina and sell them for 50% of what they sell them for and still make a hefty profit.
Yeah, I really wish that you had come a few days later and was able to just smuggle one over for me, because I would have been able to sell my old 13 for, a good profit.
Yeah, if I would have known that, I would have asked the marathon to move a couple days.
Yeah. Thanks, Derek.
But pretty wild that I always think like the iPhone is crazy price here. I'm paying like $1,500, but when you see what they're paying for it, it's like wow. So
A
it's
lot of
pretty
Americans
crazy.
forget this, but iPhones are cheapest in the US, like by far. The 799, iPhone 16 basic. I mean, even with tax, let's say that's, 850 or $900, you can't get that for less than 1,000, $1,200 even in other countries. They're marked up, and I don't know why some countries are more than others. I'm gonna wait until I get to Thailand, where it's just a little bit more. But then I'm still gonna pay $100 more. Like no matter what, I'm gonna pay 10% more. The only benefit right now is SIM card trays. In the US,
We don't have them.
no more. And sometimes I go to these random countries and maybe I might want a SIM card or just for resale. I don't know.
So I have T-Mobile, which has always been pretty good at other countries I've been in. Last year in Australia, it was especially terrible, but every other country I've been in, it was pretty good. I actually got away with just using my standard phone plan while I was in Buenos Aires. I always had signal. It was a little bit slow, but I never was like without a phone being capable of doing anything. So it wasn't that much of an issue. And I would just try to use Wi-Fi at places as much as I could. So I didn't really feel the need to get a SIM card or an eSIM in Buenos Aires. And maybe that's just because T-Mobile is really good internationally. It depends on who your carrier is going to be when you get there. But I lucked out pretty well with that.
Yeah, I think for most people that just go somewhere for, 1, 2, 3 weeks, it's fine. But if you're going to be living somewhere for 3 months or 4 months, it is so much cheaper and such a better experience to have a local SIM card, because it's going to be, 10 times faster for 10 times less money.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If it would have been, another week or two, I would have definitely considered getting one of those. But for the meantime, it was fine. And it's nice to not be on my phone all the time. That's such an American thing. They're actually on their phones quite a bit. Still not as much as Americans. I was very impressed with the Uber drivers multitasking, doing multi apps, hustling it away, and they're all shifting because I did not see one automatic car in there. Let's talk about our other favorite subject, Johnny, the cars there.
The goal was
So Volkswagen has it locked down in Argentina. They have I actually made a stupid video about it. It's not done yet, but it's like joking about how many different Volkswagens are there. So when we first got there, Johnny's like, look at this card. It looked like a Volkswagen Golf. I'm sure most people know what those are. And it said gold, GOL. And I was like, oh, someone ripped the F off the logo or something.
and the first one of those I saw, it was kind of an old beat up Golf looking thing, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, it just fell off. The F fell off. But then I saw another one with the
You're
F
like, no way.
off.
And then you see more and more and more. And then you see 8,000 other models that we don't get in the US. You see Ute kind of car pickup trucks and like weird, wild little junky cars. And all their cars suck. If you're a car guy, you're not going to like the cars you see there.
You said you liked the VW pickup truck.
I do. I think that's so cool. Like I would roll with one of those in LA. So the best car I saw, I actually saw a 50 Mustang there. I don't know how they got it there. I saw a Raptor too, a F-150 Raptor, which is definitely not sold down there. So someone brought it down there. The guy in the Mustang was mobbing through the streets because he had it cranked on the loudest exhaust setting and just going wild. Meanwhile, everybody else is in like a 100 horsepower 3-cylinder car.
In a goal.
Yeah.
So one big thing that people talk about is safety. Did you feel anything? Anything happen?
I felt fine. There was not one instance where I felt safer there than in Los Angeles. Also, the police presence, like not even just in the touristy neighborhoods, everywhere. There's cops on every corner. They're crawling. I don't know if I'd like that in the US, but I kind of felt fine with it there. And they're not like intimidating. They're just kind of hanging out. And they interesting thing too, the police run their sirens 24/7. So you could see a cop car coming from like blocks away. I kind of wish they did that in US. You got a little warning. They're around the corner.
Well, that's something that they took from somewhere from Europe, where it's a law where when the cop is on duty, they have to have the blues on. So not the blue and red, but just the blues.
Yep.
And a lot of other countries adopt that. In Georgia, where I was, they had that. Here in Ukraine, they had that. And actually, funny enough, I pulled myself over twice in the beginning, thinking that I was getting
If
pulled
I saw
over.
them rolling up behind me, I'm like, oh God, what did I do? So that was interesting. From a crime standpoint, I didn't feel unsafe at all. There were after you left, Johnny, I was going through some other neighborhoods, and there's definitely at first I was like, you know what? There's not that many homeless people here. I saw a couple. They all look semi clean, so I was like, maybe they got a place to sleep at night. But you get out and walk around a little bit more. There actually are a lot of homeless people. Maybe not as bad as LA, but definitely like noticeable. And but they feel more harmless in a sense. They don't look like they're like schizophrenic or kind of on drugs or like, have mental health issues. They look legit like down and out
Yeah.
homeless.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like maybe things have just gotten better in Buenos Aires, even though the economy is so bad. It could also just be in Buenos Aires. It's good. We haven't been in the rest of the country, obviously.
Yeah, when we were driving to the airport, so I flew into the one airport that's closer to the city, and then flew out of the further one, which I think you flew out of too, EZE Airport. And when you're driving out there, it's way out. But did you notice in the Uber that like there's a lot of like apartment towers that looked very much like like government housing project type towers?
Yeah.
I feel like they kind of moved a lot of people kind of out further out.
Yeah, it could be. Shout out to Easy
Nice airport though.
from from former NWA
Good
frontman.
lounge too.
Yeah, actually, I had no problems flying out of Buenos Aires, but when I got to Madrid, Polish Airlines would not let me on the flight because I didn't have a boarding pass. And when I tried to check in, they said there was a problem with my ticket, that my birthday was written down as 2020, 2019 or something.
Oh, I can see
And
that.
I, thought it would be an easy fix. I was there for 3 hours. They never fixed it, and the plane left without me.
Oh no, I've knock on wood, I've still never missed a flight. I had to run like Home Alone style in Santiago on the way to Argentina, but I actually did make it. I was the last one on the flight. One more safety thing I want to touch on though, and also car related, is I didn't feel unsafe crime wise or anything like that, but just beware.
Don't cross the street.
Yes. I also made another video literally at a stop sign at an intersection and just go, here's how they stop in Buenos Aires. They roll right through it. They might tap on the brakes for a second, but they are not stopping. And if they see you, they're just gonna go.
Yeah. And like I've almost gotten hit a few times the first few days until I realized they are not going to stop. Like it could be a stop sign for them. You could
Yep.
be walking across the street already, like halfway across. They're
Doesn't
just gonna
matter.
go.
They will stop at stoplights though. They respect stoplights, but not the signs.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I think their laws are probably different than if you run a red versus you just go through a crosswalk.
But a
So
good thing in that sense is there's a lot of cars there. Like every street is jam packed full of cars. I don't know how you find a parking spot there because there are none. The only parking spots I saw open were outside the embassies and they were like reserved for, embassy people. Otherwise, every single street, whether it's quiet, busy, I must have walked 50 miles when I was there. And there's no parking spots. So it's like you get a spot and you just latch onto it. And there's so many cars, but it's all moving. The worst traffic I was in, we were still like crawling and moving along. I think that helps that they don't stop because imagine one car stopping and then it just stacks up, stacks up, stacks up. They just keep moving through it and the whole city just flows.
Well, that's a good analogy for the entire economy of Argentina because it shouldn't work, but somehow, despite all of its, chaos, is all the hyperinflation, the money devaluing, everything. The country kind of just flows, and the people do as well. They continue to go out. They'll have their drinks, they'll have their steak. It's just one of those things where Argentina. I hope one day you have stability, but thank God that everybody there is so tranquilo and so relaxed that you just go with the flow because somehow the country has stayed the course.
Yeah, it was really chill. It was kind of like a happy medium. They weren't in a hurry to do anything, but they definitely weren't like lazy about it and not doing anything at all. It was just kind of like you're just going through your day and doing your thing.
Yeah. So overall, how did you like, Argentina or at least Buenos Aires? And would you go again? Would you recommend to a friend?
I really liked it. It's so far. God, it was like, I mean, just flight wise, that's a killer for me. These days, I'm like, the flights just ruin me. But on the way back, I actually was able to sleep through a lot of it. But I'm like, I need to start flying business if I'm doing these long flights because that gets old quick. And there weirdly were no direct flights from LA, which I thought was strange because Buenos Aires is like I think it was like 14 million people, which is huge. It's almost like the size of New York. So I had to fly through Santiago, Chile, which gets you 90% of the way. So you're like, I'm almost there. And then you're like, one more crappy 2 hour flight. So in that sense, I'd really need a good reason to go back, but I really liked it. It was a lot better than I expected. I don't know. I don't really know what I expected. I just heard it's like a cool European vibe city, and I've never even been to South America. So it really exceeded my expectations.
That's good to hear. I liked it as well. It's been on my kind of bucket list for the last, let's say, 10 years or so, ever since I read 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. And I liked it a lot. I'm happy that I got to go as part of the Visit Buenos Aires tourism trip because I wouldn't have gone. Otherwise, I wasn't running a marathon or anything like Derek. But I really liked it. Actually, it met expectations. I think people had hyped it up so much over the years. And also, I was expecting it to be cheaper because everybody talked about how cheap it was the last few years.
I think we missed it by like 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of it depends on the current exchange rates. I would recommend people go for one of two reasons. One is if you want to escape the winter and you want to go somewhere that has the opposite seasons, and you don't want to go all the way to like Australia or something. This is a great way to be a snowbird. You can literally spend 6 months of the year in the northern hemisphere and then 6 months in the southern hemisphere in Argentina and have summer year round.
That's a good point.
Secondly, when you go and there's a good exchange rate, you can have a very, very high quality food and drinks and, life experiences, Airbnbs, the hotels, everything. All really good quality, easy to get around with Ubers, decent Wi-Fi, decent infrastructure, and you can have that European feeling while being in the US time zone if you needed to be there. But potentially a good deal depending on what the current exchange rate is, what the current inflation rate is.
Yeah, the time zone factor was nice. I was able to keep in touch with a lot of people from California very easily because it was only 4 hours ahead. And if you live in the East Coast in the US, it's only 1 hour ahead. So it's really not an issue there. Whereas like if you're in Australia or if you're in Europe, you're 8 hours ahead, 16 hours ahead, Asia, things like that. It's a burden. I mean, I have to deal with Sam and Johnny's travels all over the place to try to schedule us a podcast, and it's not fun sometimes. It's really difficult. You're recording at midnight, or someone's waking up at 6 a.m. If you're in South America, you're pretty close to normal U.S. time. If you need to work remotely and do business in U.S. time, I think that's a huge advantage over doing something in Europe or something like that.
Yeah, so just to give everyone an idea, I am in Kyiv right now in Eastern Europe, and it's 9 p.m.
It's 11 a.m. here in Los Angeles.
And in Asia, where Sam is, in Chiang Mai in Thailand, it's 1 a.m.
So when you guys complain that a quarterly update, it's a little bit late or something like that, when we're on 3 different continents, it's super hard to coordinate. And these days, I think Sam is going to bed at like 7 p.m.
Yeah. So if you did, work for a US company and you wanted to be in the same time zone, Argentina would be a fantastic place to be based. I would recommend it for a lot of people. It's not really particularly for me because I don't like going out late. I don't like eating late. But for people who want, all night drinks, all night parties, or if you want to just take advantage of the happy hours and then go to bed early, it could be a good place. Good community, nice people.
I like to eat late, go out semi late. There was one night we went out, Johnny left early, and I was like, they're like, we're going to one more place. I'll go. I'm like, I'll go. And then I looked down at my phone and it was 2 a.m. And I literally stood up and I go, guys, I gotta go. they're like, we just got here. I'm like, oh, I have to go.
You're like, I'm running a marathon in the morning.
I went to the marathon at like 6:30 in the morning. Select group of people were walking one way, and obviously the thousands of runners were walking the other way. And it was people leaving the club at like 6 a.m.
Yeah, that's very normal. So to wrap this up, people want to know, how did you do? Did you finish?
I did finish, and actually it went very well. I was worried it was going to rain. I think the first half we recorded this, Johnny, it was pouring rain when we were down there.
Yes.
And that's what the forecast calls for. I was like, this could be an interesting race. It actually held off. It was really hazy in the beginning, and then it got really dark. And I'm like, oh, here it comes for the second half. And it actually never rained, except when I got to the very end of the course, the road was all wet. So I think it did rain. And thankfully, I was too slow to actually catch the rain. So,
Oh, wow. All right.
I think I finished in like four hours and like 28 minutes, which isn't my best time, but it's not my worst either. And I felt really good. Shout out Icy Hot. My knees usually go out. So I was like, I'm going to counteract it this time. I brought like a tube of Icy Hot and like slathered it on my knees. And it actually worked. Like my knees completely worked through the race. I credit that. But then, when you're in the race and you put it on, I was like, oh, it's still on my hands. And then I was like rubbing it on my arms.
Rubbing
So like
your
my
eyes.
whole body is like on fire. It worked though.
And what continent was that for you for marathons?
That was number 4. So I started in Paris. France was my first one. Las Vegas was my second one, and ran the Vegas Strip at night. That was interesting. Then did Sydney, Australia, and now Buenos Aires. So I have Africa left, which I was looking at Egypt in January. We'll see if that happens. Otherwise, I thought maybe I could find something in Asia in January, because I think Johnny has a event out there. It'd be kind of good to see you again.
Yeah, so I'm hosting the Nomad Summit. It's coming back again for the first time since 2020, since COVID. I will talk about it more in maybe the quarterly updates, but basically I'm handing off the business to another guy who was actually at the previous events, and this one we're going to be doing kind of a co-organization, but then after that it's going to be all theirs.
Well, that's exciting. And there's going to be stuff in Patreon soon. We've been a little lacking on that because we've all been traveling around. But quarterly update will be within the next week. Sam is back in Europe, I believe. He's taking a little side trip, which I'm sure he'll talk about in the quarterly update. So look for that next week. And we have a great guest coming up that I just booked. So lots of fun stuff coming. October is going to be busy. We're kind of over our summer vacation, I guess you could call it, and we're back to work.
Yeah, and it's officially fall now. So happy autumn, everyone. Get your Halloween costumes ready. And I'm going to go as a chair of the Fed, Jerome Powell.
Oh. Shout out Jerome Powell, half a percent interest rate cut. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
All right. Well, shout out to Jerome if you're listening to this. All right. See you guys in the next one.
Yeah.
Peace out.
Thanks for listening to the Invest Like a Boss podcast. Join our mailing list at investlikeaboss.com to get exclusive access to our insider investment portfolios and our private members forum.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends and leave us a review in the iTunes store. It helps more than you know. See you guys next week.